evening, I call the meeting to order. Could I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Councilmember Switzer.
Here.
Councilmember Phillips.
Here.
Councilmember Holt.
Here.
Councilmember McCafferty.
Here.
Vice Mayor Garcia.
Here.
Mayor Armstrong.
Here. No law eagles tonight?
None.
Item 2, discussion items. A, consideration and discussion regarding the fiscal year 26-27 budget. Madam Hill, I guess you're up.
Thank you. Yes, I will do a brief introduction to, before I kick it over to Madam Howell, who just wanted to first say thank you to council for the first budget retreat that we had, where we got some preliminary information. You heard that, the preemptive spiel then, and you heard it more since then. We are in a financial situation where we need to be cautious, conservative and cautious. We continue to see our share of revenues decline, state share of revenues. We need to, we appreciate that you as a council understand the importance of bringing in new lines of revenue so that we don't continue to be in the either-or position. This is really our third year of tightening the belt. And staff, thank you very much. They went through and poured through and met with me, met with Katie, met with their teams to see what we could do, what things we weren't using, where we could reduce to, again, instead of, even though the CPI is increasing, and we were seeing costs of services and all the incidentals going up, staff was still able to maintain their operating budgets or reduce them, which is quite a challenge. And I thank them for that at this point without impacting services. That's the next step. We're going to have to look at making choices about the services we deliver and the amenities. If we go farther, if we want to cut farther, or if it continues. The other thing we caution about is, we don't want to get into where we're kicking the can down the road. Deferred maintenance never in the long run pays off. So that is part of what we're doing. We're making sure we're not doing that. But if there are things that can wait without putting us in a deferred maintenance situation, we're doing that. So those are the kinds of philosophies that you'll see in the decisions that are being brought before you and we're talking about today. So with that, I will kick it off.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. I'm going to try and project because I've had trouble the last few times speaking loud enough for the speaker. So if I start whispering and you can't hear me, let me know. So we're going to start with the summary. This is page 1 of your preliminary budget packet. This is the base budget summary compared to last year in different categories, separated into our personnel, operating, one-time operating, minor capital, major capital, debt contingency, and interfund transfers. With the total, and this is if none of those recommended items are taken and put into the budget. So this is just bare bones. Right? Correct. Okay. This is if we just went with the mandatory changes. So with our health insurance premiums, those did go up 19% this year, so that impacted our personnel. Fortunately, it was offset because we were able to reduce our public safety retirement contributions. Our percentage went down again across the board for all tiers in PSPRS. So that helped us balance that piece. Additionally, we tightened budgets on police overtime as well as on the aquatic seasonal labor to just match more closely to what we were actually utilizing. So we were able to do those. So that ended up with a slight increase of $50,000 or $51,000 over the prior year budget. Then for operating across the board, there was a reduction of $159,000 to $76,000 compared to the current year budget. On this, there are additional requests, as we'll get into the recommended requests that will push that back up. One-time operating also decreased, as well as minor capital, major capital. We do have the water reclamation facility improvements budgeted in as a base item because that is coming to you all soon for the final WIFA loan documents, so we can start on that process. So that'll not be completed by the end of the year, but it will be included in next year's budget. With that, with the base budget, it was a decrease of just under 13 million compared to the current fiscal year. Then we'll get into requests and what we're going to do as far as format. I'll go through these summary slides, then each department will speak to the requests that they put forth, both the recommended and the ones that are not recommended at this time by town manager. So with that, the ongoing recommended requests include the different categories, so personnel and operating for those ongoing requests. So the total for personnel, we're requesting increase of $173,000, which is a 1.6% increase over the prior year. That includes that $50,000 from the base budget, or I'm sorry, it doesn't include it. It's in addition to that $50,000, but the total increase is the 1.6%. And then on our operating, the decrease of $159,000 in the base budget is offset by an increase on these recommended items of $146,000, still resulting in a net decrease of around $12,000 or 0.2% compared to the prior year. And then our one-time operating, that's where we have $723,000 in recommendations. That's a decrease of 35% over the current year, or under the current year, rather. And then our minor capital, $230,000 in recommended, which is a 58.8% decrease under the current year. And then our major capital, which is a 14.4% decrease, as we're requesting $5 million in additional to the WRF. So when those recommendations are added in, the bottom line changes to where the total recommended budget is still 4.9 million under what we have for this current year's budget. And that is if all of those requests move forward as they are now, just to give you a picture of what that is. So you can see the totals at the very bottom line, the increase or decrease over the current year budget in all of those areas. Contingency, we just do formula-based is 5%, so that would go down a little bit because the overall budget goes down. And then our debt actually does go up because of the WRF debt service that we're going to need to budget for in future years. And there is a couple of years of overlap. We have two wastewater loans that are falling off the books, but there is a year and a half of overlap with those before that goes away. Yes, sir.
So you're saying for the 26, 27, our debt's going from 2.2 to almost 2.6?
Correct.
And that's just for the year. It'll go down 100 grand after the next year, and then 250 the next year.
Correct.
Okay.
So it is going to be offset by those debt services that are falling off the books. So on this slide, it's again the base net budget. So this is a little bit different. So you've got your ongoing revenues in the second column over, and then your ongoing expenditures. So this is if none of those recommendations, just the base budget. So the first gray column is the surplus in green or deficit in red for ongoing revenues over or under expenditures. As you can see, we're in a good spot with that for the base budget, where every area except for the cemetery fund and the wastewater fund are bringing in enough revenues to cover their ongoing expenditures. And then the next two columns over are the one-time revenues and expenditures. So with those, that's where we don't often see the one-time revenues cover the one-time expenditures, because usually you're using a surplus of cash balance or of the ongoing revenues to offset those one-time expenses. So in the general fund, that's primarily due to the contingency, because we do budget in the contingency as a one-time expenditure. We do not expect that entire amount to be utilized every year, but we do program it in that way. So that's why that has a negative 816,000 there. When combined with the ongoing revenues, that results in a decrease of just under $250,000. with an estimated ending cash balance of the general fund of just under 7.5 million. So going forward through the other funds, you can see they're all in green on this slide except for court fund, and that is because that's one of those areas where we've actually put, we've had funds come in that are specifically dedicated to court improvements for technology and for security enhancements. So this will give the flexibility to start covering some of those improvements as needed during the year. So it's drawing from a fund balance that cannot be used for any other purpose. So that's why there's that 50,000 there.
And that we just approved, come from their funds into the general funds so it can be spent.
So the one that you just approved, it was to utilize their funds, yes, for some of the court improvements, but there's additional improvements that may be necessary in this upcoming year. So to give the budget capacity so we don't have to do a budget transfer this next year, that would be a one-time addition in there so the judge can look at that to see what's necessary for their improvements and to give that flexibility. And then wastewater fund, that's the area where, you know, it's struggled in general, and it continues to, it's looking better, but when we add in this additional debt service, it will be a challenge for a couple of years, and we're going to have to really analyze our rates. We're looking at options for ongoing, like a software where we can actually put in real-time data and see how that impacts and how we need to adjust rates to be a little more proactive instead of reactive.
So this deficit isn't the result of the rate study that we implemented. This is a result of the what EQ basin one that we're going to.
Correct.
Okay.
Our we've actually seen improvement in the wastewater fund since we implemented the additional fees and since the changes we made last July on our structure. That's been instrumental in helping that fund. However, it's not.
One step forward.
Yes,
Just that.
correct, correct. You know, every time we make a little headway, there's something else that comes up or another big project that needs to occur out there.
Well, why
So
we're
with
on-
that,
Why not the water one though?
we're in the 5th year of the rate step increases that you improved, so we're going to need to come back with you, and the rate model that was done for us on the outside is not holding. You know, it said we could do certain things if these things happen, and those things haven't happened. So, and also, we still, you know, it is just the wastewater fund that's indexed to general fund,
Correct.
1.2, something like that, you know, 1.3, so at some point, we would like to pay the general fund that money back. We need to do that. We're not in a position to do that yet. So every time something new comes up, particularly in wastewater, it impacts
We
that.
were able to shrink it this last year, because what happens at the end of the year when we're doing our financial statements, if there's any cash that was advanced to the wastewater fund that can be repaid to the general fund, that happens during our financial statements. So it did reduce from like the 1.6 to the 1.3. So it was moving in the right direction.
Does this reflect the PFAS funding?
This does not reflect PFAS funding because all of.
Because that's going to be another 5-10 million,
We
right?
don't know. So there is a potential, there is something that just came to our attention that there may be a need to do some additional PFAS funding. We have not met with ADEQ and Corollo to vet that out and find out what that is. We're having that meeting the next couple of weeks, and it will come to you on an agenda. But if that moves forward, we're in the line with WIFA for the funding if that should happen, but that will impact this, absolutely.
And that'll be on the water side.
Right, so I'm
That's
saying,
on the
the
water
water's
side.
looking good now, but I'm aware of the potential costs that are incurred with the
Yes.
PFAS.
Yes.
And the water is stabilizing. Again, the fill station rate changes were huge in that. We've seen a lot of improvement there. However, you've got to keep in mind the large-scale things that need to happen eventually, like we've all talked about, which are the redundancy and resiliency in the system, and how much can our 1,000-user system support.
Originally, they thought that the contamination was going to get covered by state and fed, and that's not looking that way, or?
We'll talk to you about that. Yes, in the original presentation to council, ADQ assured us that they would 100% costs, and now they're coming back to us and saying that may not be the case, to a large extent too, not just small, so.
I figured.
Yeah, but until we can dive in and hear more, they gotta prove it to us first before we can bring it to you.
Can I mention the
Yes.
MND?
Yes.
So with that, even if that does end up moving forward in that direction, because it is PFAS related, there's a greater opportunity for
Yes.
up to 90% forgivable
Mhm.
on the principal with that. So that's
Makes it more
positive.
viable.
So it could still impact the bottom line, like any debt service does, but it could be to a much smaller extent, depending on where we actually end up on this project. So this is the overview of the net budget, same style, just with those recommendations included. So on the general fund side, I want to show that, so the top line there, even with those recommendations, the ongoing revenues do cover the ongoing expenditures with a surplus of just under $250,000. And then the one-time revenues don't cover the one-time expenditures. But again, that's because those are one-time in nature that aren't expected to recur year after year, including almost $1 million for contingency in that amount, which would leave us with an estimated ending cash balance in the general fund of $6.6 million. Going forward to some of our other major funds, so our general capital improvement fund, we would draw on that one a little bit, and by just under $500,000, and that would leave us with a pretty small balance in there, but there's, we'll get into all the recommendations and we can talk through those. And then HERF would still have a cash balance in excess of $1 million, as well as Streets Capital Improvement Fund would have a small balance, but we would be utilizing $500,000 of that to do $2 million in street improvements this next year. And then I'm going to skip down to, on the capital asset replacement fund, again, that's one where we put money into that fund and then utilize it for replacements as needed. So that one would still have a cash balance of $162,000 and, or I'm sorry, 284.
Yep.
I was off the line, thank you. So we would still have a decent amount in there for future year replacements. However, we do need to start considering putting money back from the general fund to transfer over there. There's very little money that actually goes into the capital asset replacement fund. There's some that accrues from interest, and then there are, as we auction surplus property, we put that money back in that fund. But it's relatively minimal, and in the past, there were general fund transfers to help supplement that fund, and we've overdone for years where we don't need to utilize it. This may not be the year to add funds back to that. However, it's something that we should consider, at least in future years, to have a more stable plan. I know our fleet manager has been working with a new software, and we had a lot more extensive fleet discussions this year on what was being utilized, how it was being utilized, if it was justified for the amount of miles, or that whole scale of if those vehicles are necessary, is there any sharing that can be done? There were some adjustments made, and he is working on a long-term plan to figure out how much we would need to set aside each year to fully replace our fleet as they actually need. Because as we let assets age, then they start requiring more maintenance, and those costs actually go up. So he's got a lot of data-driven information now where we can actually show when it's beneficial to replace versus continuing to repair some of these.
And have a funded, planned replacement program for the first time.
So overall, with that, our estimated ending cash balance would be around $10.5 million. The reserve should be 25% of operating expenditures in the general or in the general governmental and enterprise funds. So that's approximately $4.95 million. So that will leave a surplus of about 5.6. We do not recommend spending down that additional cash reserves because you never know what's going to happen. So it's important to keep a cushion there just to make sure that we can correspond with any changes in the economy and our sales tax revenues. With the revenues that were projected, we are looking at very minimal increases. So in sales tax, we were looking at a 1% increase over the current year, which we had decreased the prior year as well. And we are close to projections, but in the most recent month, we did see a little dip. On the other side of that, and when I say a little dip, it was less than a 1% drop, but on the other side of that, we are seeing additional revenues come in from our external contract auditor. She's been working on various audits for the town for a little over a year now, and we're to the point where we're starting to see revenues come in from that, which is beneficial. We've seen about 90,000 since January come in sales tax revenue that we hadn't identified or did not have on the radar to collect. So that's been beneficial, and then since she started, she has identified just right around 700,000 in revenue. So it's been a very, very important process and something that is going to help get businesses in line or help them start reporting the way they should or whatever else, or if they're just not aware. And getting those additional revenues will help for the long term. That doesn't mean we get that amount every year. It's and that's not collected, that's just assessed. So we may never see some of those funds, but it's a step towards the right direction, and then there's those ongoing reporting amounts that we'll see from that work. So next, yes, sir.
I don't know, would anybody besides me benefit? Can you go over what your projections are, what you're actually thinking about we're going to generate in revenue? So that I can follow along and see how we are. Like, what is our revenue generation that you're thinking for TPT for next fiscal year?
So I have that rolled into the slide, but I don't have the breakdown. So we can get you those for the next
Well, because
meeting.
it'll help me go, as we're going through this, we're starting with $100, okay, we're talking about 10 for the police department, 10 for this, facilities, 10, so we can follow along. It just, I don't know, maybe it's just me, I don't know if anybody else cares about it, but I would like to see how much money we're actually projecting to generate for the year so that we can start subtracting it instead of just seeing what the projections for expenditures are.
Well, so that's the first column, it just combines it by fund. So the very first column is the revenues that we're projecting.
Right.
So that's that 24,627,229. So that's for the ongoing revenues, so the ones that we expect to see every year.
Okay.
And then the one-time revenues are going to be the right after the first gray column. So at the bottom of that one, that's 17 million. Now, a large portion of that is for the WIFA loan proceeds that we're going to get for the WRF.
Right.
So that offsets that piece. Additionally, there's grants that are expected where if we don't actually get those grant revenues, then those expenses aren't utilized either.
What was our projection for this fiscal year for first column?
So for the first column for this year, it was just under 20, it was 24,991, so it dropped slightly.
So correct me if I'm wrong, we're projecting a lower revenue base this fiscal year than we did last year.
Correct.
Yes.
And what's that percentage? Did you say 1%, 2%?
I was saying 1% in the sales tax itself. I was saying we did a slight increase over what we projected last year.
Okay.
But it's a roll-up of all of our different revenue lines. So what we do is, when I'm looking at that, it's, okay, where are we at on charges for services? Where are we at on fines and forfeitures and fees and all of that? So we look at each line individually, and then that's the cumulative.
So ideally, the most profitable area for us, that number should be much higher than what we projected for last year.
Yes.
So we're actually going backwards. I mean,
Yeah,
is that
slightly,
the truth?
yes, yeah.
300,000.
Our expenses are going up and our revenue's going down.
And some of that is, with some of that piece, it's going to be like like I was saying, our fines and forfeitures, they vary year to year. Permits are a big area that fluctuates from year to year. And interest is another area where it's, it was high for a while and now we're seeing it, drop back down. So all of those things are what we take into account when we're looking at that.
No, I understand that, but bottom line is, it's still, our revenue's going down and our expenses are going up.
Correct.
So that's not a good formula.
No. And so that's why in this, our ongoing revenues are projected at 24 million, and we are only looking at recommending expenditures at 23, which gives us, a million. It's not a lot, but it's a good cushion, and that's with all of the recommendations that we have. Now, if you approve some, add some in, take some out, that will change, but if you went with everything that additionally we recommended, we'd still be $1 million under projections.
Thank you.
So overall, it would be, just to surmise, yeah, we would be looking at 2.6 million, reducing our fund balances with this formula.
But the good point in what you said, and I think that this council did, is that we are the most conservative with the ongoing, because we don't know, right? The one time, you've got one-time money, and then you can look at that again next year. Once you commit to certain ongoing things, those are harder to change, and so that's where we're the most conservative.
So this next section will be the department requests. So this is the areas where they can, leadership will let you know what they requested in their area, and you'll see on each slide whether or not they were recommended or not. Because they're grouped by department, they don't match your book exactly, but I can give you page numbers as we go, if you'd like to look at the detailed portion of that. So the first one up is going to be community services, and the detail for these projects is on page 59 of your preliminary budget.
All right, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council, I'll give you a moment to get to page 59. We don't have a lot to ask for this year. That's kidding me.
Sorry.
All right, so our first request is more for the community center park improvements. This past year, you approved $250,000, which we are currently in the process of finalizing and then completing the first phase, which would be phase 1A. This next year, we're asking to complete phase 1B, which will include the construction of the actual pickleball courts. We of course, are continually looking for grant opportunities. We are looking for partnerships with other organizations, i.e. the pickleball organization or any other community members, businesses, etc., that would like to contribute to that. This will be a multi-phase and multi-year process with the hope of finishing in fiscal year 30-31 with phase 3B. This year, we're asking for $280,000 to fund the phase 1B, which would include, again, the pickleball courts, along with the detention pond expansion. And then in your packet, you can see where we go from here after those years. Any questions on those? I'm sure there are.
Did you talk about P9?
I'm sorry? We'll do the P-Mine also. Okay, I believe Jesse and I are going to tag team the P-Mine request. Councilman McCafferty, I think you will be very pleased to look
I've
at
only
this
been
request.
bugging you 6 years ago.
Exactly. I like to tell the story that when I started in 2005, one of the very first meetings I ever sat in on was a meeting with Prescott and Chino Valley's Parks and Recreation Department. And the conversation was about the P-Mine Trail. And at that point in time, the conversation was that the trail connectivity was imminent. It was happening tomorrow. We were going to see
That was
this trail
2005?
happen. That was in 2005. In 2017, when I rejoined Community Services, once again, we had the conversation, and once again, the conversation was imminent. This is happening tomorrow, this is going to happen. Here we are in year 2026, and we are still waiting on that connectivity. Again, we received a grant in 2024 to do a scope and engineering for, was it engineering or just planning? Yeah, for the construction over Granite Creek Wash. A little bit of history with the Peavine Trail. The original trail goes through some private-owned land. At one point in time, there was even some lawsuits trying to get the Peavine to continue through the private ranch land, and that didn't happen. So it has had to be diverted onto state land, and with doing that, we do have to cross Granite Creek. For those of you that are aware of Granite Creek is just a dry, sandy bed for 99.9% of the time.
Until they flood.
Exactly, until it's flooded. Getting across it, whether it be equestrian or bike or even on foot, is almost next to impossible because of the depth of the sand. So the first grant in '24 was to identify ways to go around that, which could be engineered as such as a boardwalk, some sort of bridge crossing, some other form of engineered plans. I believe those plans have been submitted. This next grant that was submitted by Jesse is to actually build whatever came out of the engineering plans, and then for the eventual connectivity to Prescott.
So this doesn't play into the 4 North?
No,
This is
That
all
was
the
separate
south.
grant or something, wasn't there a
that's a
separate?
separate section. So this one was funded through the Transportation Alternatives Program. It brought us to 30% scoping. We need to apply, or I did apply for the remaining design as well as the construction. So that total amount is for everything. So, but that is only for the southern side.
So we're funding 155 is what you're requesting, not the
Yes.
2.7.
Asking for 155 for our match of the 27 million. Or it's 27 million, on my word. It's a really grand Yes, 2.7.
Yeah.
And those are the two things that Community Services is asking for this year.
So next is development services, and that's going to be on page 13. Personnel requests. You don't have to go to the detail, it just has the full narrative.
Just that one paragraph?
So this year we are asking for $7,338 to upgrade one position. It creates a career ladder, helps us retain good employees, and it will offset some of the issues that we have with both code people coming into the office and dumping everything on the assistant director. One of them could be the one that makes those decisions out in the field with what happens, and that makes a smoother flowing, more efficient organization and frees up that about 25% of Will's time working through that. If we have someone that's trained to do that, then when they have the real big issues, that's when you push it up the flagpole instead of everything every day. I mean, I can't even tell you. I have to tell the guys, go away, I need to talk to Will, because we have other things that are going on besides this guy's trash can and this, inoperative vehicle, and this guy has sent me this email, and this guy called and he's mad, and it's like, if we have somebody that can help manage that aspect of it, then we'll take the bigger tough things, and I think we'll be a more efficient department, so that is our request for the
And as you remember, in the original conversation, we were looking at phased plan where, the assistant director would eventually move up to director, and we take that out and we balance it with actually looking for a supervisory position. And we heard some of the concern with council about a supervisor over one person or adding more supervisory personnel. So we went back to the table and talked about how can we achieve that goal of having some day-to-day decision-making among that staff, and it's more of a model that we use like in utilities and streets, where there's a lead worker on a crew, they can make day-to-day decisions, make sure things get done, not everything has to come back into the supervisor, and so that's the model we're using for this. It reduced the cost, it didn't add another supervisory position, but it still met the need of being more effective organizationally.
How confident are you that you have someone who can fit that role?
Very.
This isn't just a one and done, this is a determining cost, right?
Correct, that's a continual.
Yeah.
Continue.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a
So-
personnel cost.
Okay.
It's just not requiring any additional operating one-time or ongoing operating costs because it's no additional FTEs.
No
It's a
additional
current-
equipment, desk, computer, car, any of that stuff, we already have that.
I understand it, but I also am not aware of any enforcement agency ever that has one supervisor and one employee. And it's a minimal amount of money, but it certainly doesn't make a lot of sense.
And so that's why we didn't make it a supervisor, it's a lead, giving them authority to make decisions in the field where we don't have two equal people. They have to come in and somebody, our manager has to make those decisions.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, I understand that. It
Yep, so
just
you understand, yep, I get it. It's still two people, is what you're saying.
It's still two people, and I can see personnel issues with it in conflict in the future, You're not my boss.
Yeah, but,
You can't tell me what I'm doing, then it goes back on Will's lap again.
but everything won't be on Will's lap, it'll just be key things.
I understand.
Yeah.
Do they have to go to get a certification to be able to be that level?
The plan, as soon as was SELA, now it's a SELA, they changed their name. They've been talking for a supervisory search for the last at least 8 years that I've been here. They keep having turnover in that division, so they keep, as soon as we get it, absolutely. As soon as I
They do
just
have
doesn't exist
base
now.
certs.
yeah,
from-
they do other base certs, they're cert 1, cert 2, cert 3 is supposed to be a supervisor, they just don't have that in the existing program.
Moving on, next is human resources, and Laura's going to be covering a lot of the personnel changes as well. This starts on page 12, so you don't have to flip anywhere right now. This will go page
Yeah.
12 to 14, and then we'll have a couple later.
Okay, so there are 7 items on this slide, 6 recommended items for your review and 1 that is not recommended for fiscal year 26-27. So the first item is a COLA 2% in the amount of $224,294. The 2% cost of living adjustment is being proposed to help employees keep pace with the rising cost of living. This adjustment is necessary to ensure that employees' purchasing power is maintained as inflation erodes the value of their wages over time. As of February, CPI rose to 2.4% over the last 12 months. In addition, March CPI was just reported at 3.3% over the last 12 months. CPI over the last 12 months exceeds the requested 2% COLA. Salary ranges would be adjusted by the approved COLA for fiscal year 26-27 and also the 2% for the prior year, as they were not adjusted to match the fiscal year 25-26 COLA as is usually done. HR created an official red circle policy rate policy, which is included in your appendix. Employees whose compensation exceeds the maximum of their salary range will not be eligible for the COLA. Employees whose compensation would exceed the maximum of their salary range as a result of a full COLA may receive a reduced adjustment not to exceed the maximum range. So do you want me to just keep going through them? Okay. Okay, the second one is a merit recommendation up to 1% in the amount of $110,113. The merit base increase of up to 1% is being proposed to incentivize individual performance and retention to control costly employee turnover. This increase is designed to reward employees who consistently demonstrate exceptional work, align with the organization's goals, and surpass expectations. Employees who meet or exceed the minimum performance standards for their position would be eligible for the 1% increase. So the next one is a merit up to 1% over max, and this is a one-time cost of $3,181. There are 4 employees projected to exceed the maximum of their assigned salary range. This is the first year the town will be implementing a structured approach to limit compensation within established ranges. In prior years, employees were allowed to exceed the maximum in recognition of their performance and contributions. A one-time merit payment is proposed for these individuals as long as they meet or exceed the minimum performance standards for their position. This payment will be provided as a lump sum and will not be added to their base salary or carried forward in future years. This approach allows the town to acknowledge these employees' performance while maintaining the integrity of this established compensation structure moving forward. This will also support our retention program and, more importantly, help avoid costly employee turnover.
Can I just ask about that? So it's like a
Yeah.
cash award, basically?
Yeah, it's a one-time lump sum payment, so it doesn't add to the base and you don't pay benefits on it.
And so with it, if I might, I want to
Yeah.
take from the conversation that obviously came up from a conversation last year where we didn't really have a policy on red circle rates and how we handled that. So both Laura and Katie and I got together, they did some deep research on all the different types that were out there. And this really seemed the fairest way. It keeps us within that. And those payouts, those lump sum payouts would have to be approved every year with the budget. So if there is money, then we will give those lump sum payments. If we're in a situation where we don't have money, then, and you're at the maximum, then council could say, no, we're not going to pay that lump sum. But the key is it doesn't accrue going forward when we do those lump sum payments. So when we have the cash and we can do it, we certainly want to be able to still acknowledge that without pushing people outside of their range or accruing those costs in the future.
I don't have a problem with going up, but that last paragraph, employees who do not meet the minimum performance standards for their position will not be eligible for any merit increase. And they shouldn't be available,
And they never are.
considered employment. They can't meet the standards, they ought to be gone.
What we try and do is get them back on track before we get them gone.
Good letter?
What's that process take?
Well, we go through coaching, counseling, discipline, or a performance improvement plan, set the expectations. If they continue not to meet standards, then we go through a different process.
So the performance becomes conduct.
Yes.
How many employees do we have, just as a blanket number, that have never, or that don't get their merit increase? Is there 5 or 10, or is it just 0 and it becomes automatic, kind of like grades in school nowadays?
It's very few that we come across that do not get a merit increase, because we try throughout the year to proactively coach and counsel them, so they don't fall into that situation. But we have had a few here and there.
And typically what I've seen in, not this organization, but it could happen in this organization, is you're going through that process with somebody, and the final stage is where they hit them in the face is, you're not getting a merit this year. We've been coaching you, we've been working with you, it shows up in your final review that you're not getting a merit increase, and that knows over the next year what the next step is. And usually when the people see that, they either step up or they leave.
Yes.
We usually see most times they voluntarily leave before we go through the process of termination.
Who's working with them in counseling?
The department heads, supervisors, managers, along with human resources. And the town manager is always kept apprised of the status.
Particularly when we get to that stage where we're looking at termination. It usually comes to my desk.
We have just cause employees, so we have to be very careful as to how we approach that specific topic. So we have a very good performance management process.
Chief, you have a different one, right? Your system is
Yes.
different.
Normally, if they don't meet the minimum standard, they're not talking about merit, they're looking for somewhere else to.
Yeah, so it's the same thing.
Much higher bar.
They're working over the public works, right?
Yeah.
Sorry. I was just joking.
I think you have something.
So on the flip side of that, I would almost like to see merit increases go to exceeding standards. You know, just meeting standards is status quo. Should the county really pushed to get a merit increase, you had to be above minimum standards.
So I guess it's how you define exceeds. Always exceeds my expectations. They never do
Well, not
anything
always,
wrong.
but
So that's the question, how do we
I
define
don't know how
it?
you guys do that, so, you know, whether it's a number system or how that works for the county, I guess that'd be good for us to see is how that evaluation sheet is graded.
How about public complaints on an employee? How many times they get a complaint from outside of
What would you say? We don't really encounter too many.
That would all be history.
And they typically, the same thing, it gets funneled to
Yeah.
the supervisor and it's folded into their ongoing performance. And, you know, what are those things, what is it, you know, how can we address, where are those coming from? So yes, it is part of their ongoing review.
Yeah, it's addressed
Absolutely.
immediately and then set expectation moving forward, so it doesn't happen again. What did we do wrong to make this happen? What did we not offer? What did we not have in place? So,
And I can tell you from a police department standpoint, since we come in contact with a lot of people that don't end up liking us because we take them to jail or give tickets, we get a lot of those complaints. There's a process for the complaints, whether they were sustained or exonerated and all that stuff. And those are filed. We keep monthly logs. We do quarterly reports or performance improvement binders or performance action binders that we have throughout the year dictate whether they meet standards, exceed standards, things like that. And a lot of those complaints are, you know, they're looked at and they're exonerated from any complaint. They didn't really do anything wrong. And then now with the day of body cam, dash cam, all that
Yes.
kind of stuff.
You get a lot?
No, I wouldn't say a lot, but probably more than any other department.
Well, yeah.
More contact with people
Right.
that we don't like, that they don't like us. But
I think they complain and then they find out there's a body cam and they're like, oh, never mind.
a lot of the time it's like, where did they do that? Never mind.
Yeah.
And in a lot of the other areas, we balance what is process and what is person, and how do we
Yes.
manage those two? Because there are processes that frustrate people, and so then it comes to rest on whoever it is, whether, you know, it's somebody that's trying to make a utility payment arrangement, or it's somebody that's going through development services process. Is it the person, is it the process, and how do we look at both of those things to see how we can make a difference,
That's a very good point.
right?
Okay, onward? Okay, the next item is the police market pay adjustment of 3% in the amount of $103,018. So recent market trends indicate that neighboring law enforcement agencies have implemented significant pay increases to remain competitive in recruiting and retaining sworn personnel. As a result, maintaining current compensation levels without adjustment places the town at risk of falling behind the regional market. To address this market adjustment for police officers, sergeants, and lieutenants is being proposed in addition to the COLA and merit increase. This approach helps ensure that compensation remains competitive, supports retention of experienced sworn personnel, and reduces the risk of turnover to higher paying agencies. And I just wanted to note that this is also supported by Chief McIntyre, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, in conjunction with the freeze of one officer position. So the next item is townwide positions to freeze in fiscal year 26-27. It's recommended that 3 vacant positions, so these positions are not filled, lands examiner, police officer, and streets maintenance worker, are frozen for fiscal year 26-27. While the associated FTEs will be retained on the books, no funding will be budgeted for these positions during fiscal year 26-27. This approach provides greater flexibility than just permanently eliminating these positions. The frozen positions will be reevaluated in fiscal year 27-28 and may be considered for funding at that time. So the next one is a one-time operating request.
Hold on, can we just go back to that
Yes.
since we're here? I mean, we're on it. The plans examiner, did we lose somebody?
We did a while ago.
Many years
I was
ago.
gonna say, because I don't remember there being another
It's-
plan examiner.
A couple years ago.
It's been a temporary person that helps from time to time.
Well, that was the
like-
person that retired and we kept him.
We actually did have that position filled with somebody who didn't work out.
Short term.
And then we brought
They
in
saw the administrative process run really quick.
a floater, yeah.
Well, I'm just wondering, because last year's budget, we had it on there, we didn't fill it. The year before, we had it on there, we didn't fill it. So I'm wondering if, we're kind of using it as a secret hiding spot for funding. Why don't we just do away with it, and then when the need arises, come before the council and argue your point then, instead of keeping a position open and having to do this, because this is a temporary Band-Aid fix.
So I would say with the freeze on this one, correct me if I'm wrong, Lori, but with a plans examiner, there's times where they do experience high volume if we start having an influx of permits coming in, applications to where they might need that flexibility during the year. And to add a FTE in the middle of the year would be very difficult, or it's something where they haven't changed their department size in, I think, over 15 years, something like that. They are basically at the same number of staffing. So it was an idea for this next year to kind of see how things go, and then it could be reevaluated. But please feel free to
Yeah,
add.
trying to add a position mid-budget year is super hard because it's positions that are already authorized in the budget. If this is an authorized position, then it's easier for us to come in and say, hey, we are having this issue, we need to fill it. If we need to go back and amend the budget because we don't have that FTE in there, and we're overloaded, that makes
And I
it really
think-
hard.
We're starting to see, and this is one of those things where this is the first place we're going to see it if we see development activity in the community, start happening. We're starting to see
You
that a
wouldn't be able
little
to do
bit.
anything about it this year.
Yeah.
Because you've already frozen it and reallocated the funding for that position elsewhere.
So we would just have to come to you and ask to unfreeze the funding. We wouldn't have to come to you and ask to add a position back in.
Right. Now, on the police, it's no secret, Josh and I butted heads when you were asking for the positions, but now that you have them, they're in your matrix, what's this going to do to your operation for public safety?
We're doing a great job keeping afloat. I obviously, as you go through, we do a pretty robust, strategic plan and stuff like that every time we come to you guys for budget. And I don't sugarcoat anything. If I need something, I ask you guys whether I know I'm going to get it or not, just so you guys know where my mindset is and where our future planning goes. With this, I'm more concerned about keeping the folks we have now, because I do have some folks that are 1 foot out the door. So without freezing a position for a market adjustment, you're talking, I'm not going to mention any police departments around here, but local agencies are looking to go up 11% this year, up to 11%. And if we only get the merit and the COLA for 3%, I'm going to have a lot of people looking elsewhere.
Right. So this won't be mission critical, this won't?
No, we'll handle this.
And operationally, the other thing we looked at.
Do I want to freeze that?
No.
But understanding the budget and stuff, yeah.
And with the
I think it's a
vacancies
necessity.
that we've had in hiring, even though it hasn't been frozen, the time it takes to fill those vacancies basically have worked out.
Well,
to the
it
same.
does with your academy.
Yes, yeah.
And the street worker,
Yeah.
are you over the streets?
Correct.
What's the mission impact? Is this position not filled now?
Correct.
And has it not been filled for a while?
Correct.
So it's not going to impact your mission at all?
Right.
Does anybody see an issue?
I see an issue with all three because I've been in the position of having positions frozen. They're frozen the first year, they're frozen the second year, they're frozen the third year, and the fourth year they're gone. Because we haven't found the funding to bring those positions back. And public safety to me is the biggest area we've got, and 2 of those positions. Roads is public safety and the PD is public safety. Plans examiners, if we go the way we're going with interest rates and stuff, I can see their job really picking up. And I don't want to lose positions, I really don't. 292, call it 300,000. I would rather see that come out of the general fund myself and see it funded that way rather than freezing positions in any of the departments. I think it's just, if it's bad this year, it's going to be worse next year. Where are we going to find the money to do it next year?
Well, correct, but those are increasing costs, not static. So each year those costs go up.
Any personnel positions an increase in cost.
Correct, but
You know, a
then
supervisor,
Then the increase with
increases every
costs,
year. And that's
and
it.
revenue's going down, so.
We freeze it today, next year it's gonna cost even more, so we're gonna have to freeze it next year. And
Possibly.
pretty soon, we're gonna be at the road where Josh is sitting here going, I don't know any people to do this.
That's
They're
what
all
we're
leaving.
looking at.
They'll be working the
Take
shift.
people.
If you keep losing revenue, Larry, then yeah, something's gonna.
I realize that, but we
something's
have a
gonna
lot
hit.
of places, we spend a lot of revenue that don't provide public safety. I mean, the biggest complaint we probably have in the entire town is roads. And to have a position frozen there, to me, is ridiculous. Every year, it's, you know, complaint after complaint about how bad the roads are.
We're getting money for roads like this now.
I know that, but we're not gonna fix that.
Yes.
So something to consider with that as well on the streets position, it's one that hasn't been filled, so that isn't, it was funded 2 years ago and it was never filled.
That's why
So,
I'm okay with that. I'm
that's
okay with that.
just a little
You
background
live
on
with it.
that.
It's up to you.
Like I said, my biggest concern is losing people if we don't do something on the back end.
Yes.
So if we have to freeze a position to retain.
It's hard, once you've got a certain, because it affects leave schedules and the rotations and everything.
And like I said, we have really good people right now, and I'd hate to see them
Yeah.
going somewhere for a take-home car and a 401k match plan. all
And
that
to
kind of
your
stuff.
point, if you said we don't want to freeze this, then I would want you to consider still doing the market adjustment so that we don't lose people.
Well, I see that, that's exactly what my statement was
Yes.
about. I wanna see them get the adjustment. We kind of automatically have that frozen position all the time. Because I think, what'd you have, 27 days this year when you had full staff?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you have how many right now that we're looking at
three
losing?
openings right now, because it's very, very, I think we have testing coming up next Saturday. We had 7 applicants, one being a lateral that pulled out, which is probably a good thing. And then probably two out of the 5 that we have left are even viable without even going through testing yet.
And how many in the drop program right now?
Two, I think 2.
And another one coming?
One's probably dropping before the end of the drop, and
Yes.
I got somebody that has an application in somewhere else right now, so.
Yeah, so this is where we need to be careful on things. We've got to do something to retain those staff.
No, I'm good with that. I have no objections to that. I just want to make sure losing an officer isn't going to have a negative impact on
Do
your
I want
operation.
it? No. Do I feel that it's a necessity to keep the people we currently have?
Yeah.
We'll just have to work.
If we do the officer and Lori, did you use this contractor before to help with the plans examiner? Or was it just a part-time
We
employee?
used the person that retired from that position, we've pulled him in a number of times to help us.
As a subcontractor? Or
Is it like a 1099?
1099? What if we do that for the plans examiner? Because I don't see that taking up as much as it should.
Well, we just adopted new codes and this person hasn't been in that process.
But I think what he's saying, that if we find in the year we have a need for it, we should use contract work to get us to the next years where we might ask for a position.
You can 1099 out of that budget, right? Okay.
Yeah, free up some space for an extra officer.
Extra officer, maybe.
Yeah.
So no, if it was a 1099 person, we would actually
Operate,
use operating funds for
not
it.
personnel.
Okay.
But if it's somebody who's hired back as a temporary, for temporary
Part-time.
hours or something, then they would be through
No
vacation.
benefits, no merit, stuff, just get them down there and get paid.
Yeah.
I
Few
don't
bucks
charge
per hour, that's it.
more than a few bucks, nothing cheaper.
I can have the council put on uniform and drive a car.
Done.
Okay.
Good question.
I have a good seal permit, so anytime you.
All in favor?
All in favor of passing?
Talking about Walmart on the front.
So you did hear that, I want to clarify that because I did misspeak, so I want to make sure that 1099 comes out of operation. Okay. Anything else on personnel before she goes on to one time?
Was the she going to talk about the sergeant, or is that?
That's me.
That's later, yeah. So then, page 43 and 44 are the one-time operating requests that Laura's going to talk about.
Okay, so there are two. One is recommended, one is not. The first one, recommended, is actually a requirement. So Yavapai Combined Trust, or health insurance, was established to provide health insurance benefits to the employees of its participating members of which we are a part of. So the members of this trust include Yavapai County, Yavapai College, City of Prescott, and the town of Chino Valley. The Board of Trustees, which we are also a part of, is charged with maintaining sufficient reserves to pay current claims, claims expenses, and administrative costs under this self-insured plan. The recent financial analysis has identified a shortfall in the trust reserves amounting to, get this, $4,325,170. Of that, $222,211.97 is the responsibility of the town. The cost breakdown is calculated based upon $63.20 per member per month as a reserve adjustment. The board determined that it is in the best interest of the trust and its participants to restore the reserves under a 2-year reserve restoration plan, and it was formally adopted pursuant to a reserve policy voted and executed on back on February 19th of 2026. So the payment schedule is a 2-tiered schedule. The first payment of not less than 50% of our total due shall be paid and received no later than July 31st of 2026 in the amount of $111 and $111,106. And then.
And 98 cents.
And 98 cents, so 97 cents. Or is it 98?
98.
The second payment of the balance due is due on July 31st, 2027 in the same amount.
In layman, what is this? Just in layman's terms, what is this?
So it's for our health insurance,
Okay.
to ensure that we have enough money in that self-insured plan to remain solvent.
Okay, that's all I needed to know, I just
Yeah.
didn't understand it. You said a lot of fancy words, I didn't know what it meant.
It's to cover medical costs, utilization, pay for the provider network, all that stuff. So, and all those expenses are going up. So the only thing that's going down is competition, which works against us,
Yeah.
right?
And the PSPRS, you didn't mention it, but Katie, just for the record, we have to pay that, we're down at $250, but that's the lowest number we've paid in several years, right? We're usually around $300,000?
So with PSPRS, I'll cover it in depth when we get to non-departmental.
Okay.
But, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, that's fine, that's fine.
Did you have something else on that?
On the YCT reserve plan, I just wanted to mention, this is in one-time operating, even though we know it's going to occur for 2 years because it is only a 2-year change. Council can elect to pay the full amount in the first year, but they've given us the ability to span it over 2 years, which is what we recommend.
Yeah.
It's not penalizing.
No,
They are not.
we're just giving our money away in advance and using our opportunities for interest, I guess. Okay, so the final item is the formal compensation and classification study that probably will cost $50,000 or more for this process. Sorry?
43 at the top.
Go backwards.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
went backwards.
So our last compensation and classification study was conducted in fiscal year 22-23, which was 4 years ago. For fiscal year 27-28, so the next fiscal year, we will again recommend a job analysis and classification review, as these public sector compensation and classification studies should typically be performed every 3 to 7 years. This is the most common practice range used by cities, counties, school districts, and special districts. We can spread out the need for formal studies more than other entities, as we regularly conduct informal studies every year. We've already started the fiscal year 26-27 internal review process for positions, which is compared to the region of PV, Prescott, and Yavapai County, and similar population-based cities and towns. So we compare ourselves to Wickenburg, Sedona, Show Low, Camp Verde, Cottonwood, Somerton, Douglas, Payson. So we're already in the process of doing that internally, as we do every year. So we use an 80% region, 20% population comparison rule to do our internal compensation studies, and there's a matrix in the appendix for your review.
Should we drop a couple of those just because their revenue is so much like Sedona? Comparing us with Sedona is like comparing, apples
Wickenburg is
and
similar.
tri-tip,
Yeah, and it's just population-based, that's why we only consider
Yeah.
20%.
Yeah, because it kills me that there's no way we can compete with a couple of those towns in there. We can't compete with Prescott.
Yeah.
Just the mayor or something like that?
attractive places for government workers to be, the less they get paid. So like in California, the beach cities were like, yeah, this is great, and they were some of the worst paid employees.
Not anymore.
So, well, comparing to like the work in Fontana, nobody wants to work in Fontana, but you get paid more as opposed to the beach, so Sedona is the same way.
Not there anymore.
They can, yeah.
Is Yuma a beach?
There's a lot of sand.
All right, thank you.
You've been at it for an hour, anybody need a break?
We're only on slide 4.
13, Laura. 13, okay.
20 minutes, 15 minutes?
Okay. You can bore us for another 20 minutes. We'll have some-
Okay.
So next is Spencer with IT. It'll start on page 35.
I'll try to be quick.
One slide.
Yeah. We have 4 items that are recommended, one or two items there that, actually, the last 2, the intrusion detection, those 2 go together, those 2 that we are not recommending. Because there was a one-time cost and an ongoing cost involved in it. The first item is composed mostly of service increase for services that we already have. Our email filtering services have gone up. We did add a new product line we're looking at adding for the benefit of the clerk's office, who just got decimated with email requests this year. And so we did add a service to that to try to accommodate some of the limitations they were dealing with this year. As well, there's other cost increases. The cost increase to host our website, that went up. Some of the records capabilities for social media, retaining those, all those costs went up this year. It was quite significant. As well, this next year, we are looking at doing some server OS upgrades, just to try to keep in line with the ongoing server OS increase, because we have to actually keep bringing our servers along. If we don't, we fall behind, and then eventually Microsoft will deprecate that server, and then it becomes even more difficult to try to keep pace with what's going on.
So you're gonna update the XP, right?
Exactly. So that's mostly what's composed in that first item, the computer software and support contracts. Most of those are, like I said, they're just increases in costs, as well as the bump for the Mimecast to try to. I know people don't like the Mimecast, but
Mimecast is the bane of my existence.
there is a lot involved in that product. It's kind of surprisingly does quite a few items. I mean, it does all our spam filtering, all our email filtering for antiviruses. It tries to block all the spoofing attacks, the phishing attacks, and it also does our archiving. So there's a lot wrapped up in that one product. So Smart Deploy, computer imaging. Microsoft has decided to go away from one of the products that we use to actually image all the desktops that come in. So anytime a desktop comes from a manufacturer, we actually will bring the image in. We will customize the image so that it gets deployed out so it's appropriate for whatever the department software needs are for that department. Removing stuff that they may have put on for the manufacturer, but trying to get it properly customized so that it can actually work properly for that department. And that's what that is. That's a software we're requesting to actually allow us to continue to do imaging on the new systems that we get. It's kind of an unfortunate cost that came along with Microsoft making decisions to benefit them, I think. The Cloud Vault is something that is to go along with our backup. One of the ongoing recommendations for things now is to use what they call immutable storage for your backup solutions, meaning that when you do your backups locally, then you roll it up to another backup in another place that is unchangeable. And that is the intent to protect your environment so that if you have to restore from something like, if there's a ransomware attack or something like that, where they lock up all your files, which is what they will typically do, you have an off-site backup that is immutable, that they cannot change. And so that is one of the recommendations that has been coming down through Berkeley Risk, as well as through our financial audits. Those are things that they're saying, you know, they start asking for these things, saying, hey, you know, do you have this in place? And so these are recommendations from the industry, and so they acknowledge those recommendations, and then I see them on the audits, and if you don't a lot of times comply with this, you sometimes get a finding then, and you have to comply or try to bring yourself up into compliance with what they want to see. And that impacts things like insurance rates and all that fun stuff that we all love to hate. The last one is the Trend Micro Vision 1 is also another security enhancement that is recommended on the audits to help us do some better monitoring practices on our servers. So whenever you're dealing with an environment, you have so many different moving parts. They recommend that you have some tool that can actually proactively watch things that are going on in your servers, changes that are being made on an ongoing basis. And then actually be able to make decisions on the fly to try to accommodate if someone actually broke in and started to make changes on your server. It can actually help to mitigate those risks that come with running in a server environment. So it used to be that the way the industry was, well, you know, if you do endpoint detection where, you know, people are actually attacking a device, that, you know, that was sufficient, but now they're starting to look for these heuristics and AI type of engines to actually look at this stuff to go, okay, this doesn't look right, let's put a hold on this so we can make some decisions on whether we want to you know, do some security practices to stop it, mitigate it, whatever. The intrusion detection is another thing I'm starting to see appear on these audits, though it's not a requirement at this point. But it was a pretty hefty, I think, expense. So I was thinking, well, maybe we can try to address that internally with something else. So we're going to have to see. That may pop up again later, but we'll just have to see what the future holds on that one. Because sometimes we don't know that until the auditors come out and say, hey, we want to see those now. And we're like, okay.
So it's a relatively low cost.
I'm gonna say, you're for IT, you're not very.
I mean, that seems like these days pretty critical.
Yeah.
Cyber crime is going up, it's not going down.
Yeah, it is, and the one bigger problem that we're starting to run into is them using AI for that cyber crime efforts. And
that's what this is supposed to.
Yeah, the hope is, I mean, you're always trying to stay ahead of the game, right? And
you never will.
The Trend Micro Vision 1 has some of that AI feature set in there to try to help mitigate and try to make you aware of something that looks fishy, so you can react to it appropriately, or it can react to it appropriately.
So that, yes, that is a good point. Relatively overall, you know, in their budget, these things are impactful, but in the town's budget, that would be something to consider.
Yeah. For what the damage could cause would be 100 times
that cost.
Do you think waiting another year while the advancements get better on that side would be detrimental to us?
Well, what I was thinking was there's different ways to approach the network intrusion detection. And so before we jumped on that bandwagon, I wanted to see and explore what other options might be available to us. Because there are some in the industry that are actually industry standards that you can implement on your own. And so that's because, you know, organizations like CISA and stuff like that, in the federal level, will sometimes offer up tools to say, hey, this can fill this void for your guys' security protocols or whatever. And so that's what I wanted to explore to see, is this something we can implement on our own without incurring the additional cost?
So maybe you can look into that and get back with us later in the year. And
Before the budget's passed?
Can we put a placeholder for that? I mean, if that's the only option.
There's a couple of options, so you can do a placeholder for it. It can also, because of the dollar amount, it's under the town manager authority to add in during the year if needed. Or it could even come back to you all as a contingency item, so it's really up to
I'd
you all
like to
what you
hear
prefer.
what you come up
That's,
with.
like you said, you don't want to get behind.
No, I agree.
And once you are, it costs more later to get caught up, so, as a taxpayer, I think it's better to do what you can in the front end. If the technology is worth it right now, waiting another year while they advance with the AI is still new. People don't know what they don't know yet.
So I think the philosophy of this was if we went with this tool, that's what it would cost. But he's not committed to that yet, we don't know. So either I can program it in, what availability I have in the budget, or we would come back to during the year and say, he's identified this need, this is what we want to do.
No, you guys have always been very supportive. I could cry anybody for that.
That's from my kids.
So the best one.
Moving on, so next is non-departmental. So this is gonna be on page 36, so you don't have to flip in there. It should be right after. So legal services, we are seeing an increase in our legal service costs. A lot of that's due to some of the more hot topics that we've had lately. We don't expect that to change in this upcoming year with the referendum and everything else. I'm sorry. But there's probably going to be the need for that. We're bumping against the budget right now, so we want to add that into non-departmental to that. Then the next two items are the Y-Plan contribution and the Yavapai Regional Transit contribution. So these are separated out because they're both transit related. In the past, Y-Plan or Simpo previously charged us around $1,000 a year is what we paid in our contribution. In their current year work plan, they would like $77,000 from us.
I thought we paid them $17,000 a year.
It never ended up being that much, like however much we actually got invoiced for was around $1,000.
Because we could use in-kind contributions towards that, so
That's gonna help us.
Yes.
I haven't heard,
So-
when Vinny did his presentation, he didn't articulate why. He just said,
I can,
give me $45 million for $70,000.
I can help with that a little bit. So after analyzing the work plan and looking at the differences, so the biggest thing was when it became Y-Plan, they took over the transit from Prescott Valley. And that is now, Yavapai is now part of that, and we're paying a contribution.
Do they service Chino?
No. We don't get.
So.
So
do we
it's
really
part
have
of
to
our
pay for that?
agreement.
No. That's not gonna
Yeah, I mean, in all fairness to Vinny and company, I understand, but they're asking us to supplement a service that we don't benefit from here, right? I just don't see the fit.
That's
I
not the
think that
only
would be.
reason in there. There's a whole bunch of other services that come within that dollar amount, other
There
than
is.
just Yavapai.
So as far as the increase goes though, it was the transit that changed their budget significantly on the Y-Plan level. However, we do get, as part of being part of that organization, we do get different grants and additional money back. In fact, this last year before Jessie came to us, she helped secure a grant from them as well, where it's more than what, I believe what we're getting is greater than what our contribution would be, but it's still something that I know Terry and I would like the whole agreement with the IGA with them looked at
So
again,
we-
because it hasn't been updated in many, many years.
Yes, on that, so had a conversation with Vinny and also with the other town managers about, we have an IGA, and the current IGA was based on population because it was totally transportation related and streets, and that made sense. But now that they have added this transportation component, which is used more heavily, obviously it serves not the entire constituency, it doesn't serve Dewey, it doesn't serve us, that we would like to look at changing that funding component to something other than just population based. So that's a process that we're engaging in, but at this point, the current IGA is totally population-based, and so we pay our percentage even if we don't benefit for some of the new services like Yavaline that was brought.
So you're saying we're obligated by IGA to pay the 76?
We're, that's what the funding plan says is our portion, but you still have to approve that.
I don't have a problem funding some, what's it called?
Yeah.
Why plan?
Why plan now?
I should have kept it
Can
simple.
staff put something?
You're the chairman, you should have done that.
No, that falls on the mayor of Preston Valley, right?
Oh, okay. But I don't have a problem personally funding something for
Wait,
them, but
yes.
that's a big number.
That's a huge,
Yeah.
So I asked if staff could put together what they'd recommend as a fair and equitable amount.
So we are going to have-
We feel that Chino should be obligated to keep the program afloat and.
So Vinnie's going to come back and do the presentation once again and ask for it, and then we will do, make our commentary on what we think is reasonable fair based on that. As the mayor had said, we do get a lot of benefit, and we got a lot of benefit for our money that typically outweighs that, but it's still, full transparency is, it has gone up and it's gone up.
With revenues going down, we just can't.
This isn't a little increase.
And same with.
It's a huge increase.
And it could even be, in that conversation with Vinnie and staff in this budget, is that we will approve it pending a new IGA is in place that comes before us next year with a new funding plan. That gives us some time for that to
That
happen.
IGA based on transportation is like from 2006.
It is very
Stupid. It should have been upgraded a long time ago.
It won't be, I don't think we can, because all the
No, not the
parties.
IGA, but can we come up with a figure that's not this figure,
No.
but something?
We could take a look at if it was based on something other than population, what would be, we would say would be a fair compensation.
Because I thought the 17,000 since we haven't been playing, but we budgeted 17,000.
We budget 17 and we have in-kind services that they take off of that. So if we do things, it reduces it, so we only have paid like $1,000 actually.
Yeah, and actually in our budget itself, it was only like 1,000
Yeah.
a year that we had in there.
The whole situation needs to be brought back by a Y plan and explained, because there was a whole bunch that was left out of that presentation, which
Yes.
gives you an idea what the 77,000 is worth, although I agree, I don't think it's Chino's benefit to pay 77,000. It needs to be restructured and looked at.
So with that, the YRT is on here as well, and that's not an additional 20,000. That's just their funding request is 20,000. Last year you all approved 17 with 3,000 to the Paulden Plunge. But because these are both transit related and such hot topics, we wanted to make sure we were talking about both of them. So neither one of those blue items is included in the recommended right now. It doesn't mean it's not recommended, it's just because it's from that third party request and we wanted you to weigh in
I think
first.
last year we requested financials from YRT, we never got them.
They asked for 40,000, I thought.
Yeah.
Yes,
We
they did.
did last year.
Yeah, they couldn't document it though, and I understand the Paulden Plunge is going away also. YRT is we've whipped the horse, now we're whipping the jockey. I mean, that's a dead system that needs to be looked at all the way around. And I think Y Plan will do that, and some of that money out of the 77 is going to be included in what they're doing with YRT, but it needs to be explained all the way down the line, because it has not been yet.
Yes.
So we still never got financials from YRT.
Correct.
Yeah, so we shouldn't be handing over money to something that's not going to run properly. Shouldn't happen. That's bad. Use of taxpayer funds.
Yeah, so we were gonna schedule YRT anyway, yes.
On the 27th.
Yes. So the next meeting that we're doing.
We can talk to each other and figure out how they can combine.
Yes. On the other side, we know that the transit service of Yavaline don't directly impact us, but we do know that YRT at this time is providing valuable services to the community that gets people to the senior center and other kinds of things, so we do recognize that. So we will schedule both of those groups to come and provide those.
They wanted to end up being a regional transportation system, whether YRT would connect with Yavaline, connect with whoever else gets stuck in there. Preston's in the middle and is stalling things, not helping us at all.
Yeah.
But, if you end up with a regional transportation system that everybody puts into it, it's not gonna be Chino paying $77,000. It just doesn't pencil out that way.
Yes.
That's a lot of money if we take that, fair percentage.
Okay, I think we have your direction.
Yes, so the last one on this is going to be on page 44, and that's the PSPRS unfunded liability payment. So the current year and prior year, we budgeted $250,000 each of those years. However, we usually end up paying a little bit more because part of our PSPRS policy is if we have funds left in the police budget towards the end of the year, we make an additional contribution. We come to you all and get approval for that, or we go from contingency. So we've done that over the last few years, so we've added an additional $200,000 usually each year. But we do recommend the base amount of the $250,000 because we are seeing that drop. We're just below 1.5 million now on our unfunded, which is great for us. We're seeing that move in a positive direction, and it is dropping our rates and everything else, which will be good once we get that fully funded. So we are recommending that continue. Any questions on that? Next, I'll turn it over to the chief.
Greetings and salutations.
Just restart groundwork?
Chief groundwork.
Yeah, chief problem. Like I said, we did a deep dive into things. A lot of the conversation this year with my command staff and I was over ALEAP accreditation stuff with things that were identified during our accreditation process, maintaining that accreditation moving forward. So there's a few things that we're looking to change.
You want to say what?
Chief, if I may,
Sorry.
at page 14 to 16. No, sorry.
So first off is reclassifications. So again, looking at workload, working at scope of work, burnout, things of that nature that comes with accreditation process. And we have a pyramid, and as we've grown in the bottom of the pyramid, the top keeps getting smaller and smaller, but all the work keeps going up to the top. So we're looking to kind of spread some of that wealth around so people can share in the fun with the rest of us. So the first reclassification we're looking to get is a senior police service specialist. So basically taking one of the 4 records clerks downstairs and making one of them a lead position or a supervisor. That'll give us kind of it's not increasing any FTEs on our side, but the position will provide dedicated oversight of records management, audits, documentation, staff for support, and ensure accuracy, consistency, and adherence to accreditation requirements. Currently, records oversight is assigned to the civilian operations supervisors whose responsibilities span multiple critical functions, limiting the ability to provide consistent hands-on supervision. This has created challenges in maintaining proactive oversight, quality control, and compliance with CJIS statutory requirements and our ALEAP standards, as I mentioned. Establishing a senior level role will improve daily supervision, reduce risk of errors and non-compliance, which all goes to liability for the town, and strengthening overall operational efficiency and accountability within the records function. So just taking one of the records folks downstairs and making them a lead position so they're down there in the office the entire day. Mayor Lee does an exceptional job with what she does, but she's got pages upon pages upon pages of tasks that she's doing, including contractual stuff, IGA, MOUs, budgetary stuff, travel, all that stuff. So we're looking to kind of spread that wealth.
Take a little bit off merrily, put
Yes.
it down.
Yeah, and having somebody in the office on the day-to-day with oversight, it would be huge.
She's your only civilian supervisor, right?
Yes, and
And
she
she's
runs.
also your executive assistant.
Yes. So she is, she's wearing several different hats, and she runs the animal shelter. She used to run animal control. We pulled that away from her and put it back under patrol. So there's a sergeant that's running our animal shelter along with, animal control. So, yeah, she needs some help. So that would help alleviate that. The other reclassification we're looking to do is taking an existing police officer position and make it into a police sergeant. Essentially, what we looked at was we have 4 patrol sergeants. We want them to be in the field with the officers. It reduced the risk of complaints, lawsuits, things like that, liability things. So a lot of the day-to-day tasks for the patrol officers, the patrol sergeants are just at the day-to-day activities, and they're out on the road answering calls for service, taking reports, so they function as a supervisor that's out there in the field. To kind of offset that, a few years back, we ended up adding an administrative sergeant, which turned into a collection point of all stuff that needs to be done. Training coordinator, firearms, the range master, quartermaster, internal affairs investigator, background investigator, hiring, planning, all that kind of stuff fell under Sergeant Wynn's purview as a administrative sergeant. So looking at that over the past, say, 3 or 4 years, we've identified a need to separate that out, especially since she also runs right now currently the investigations unit, which is 2 in-house detectives and 2 farmed out detectives. Essentially, she's the jack of all trades, master of none, and it's hard to keep things in an even keel. So the reasoning for putting another sergeant in would be to just make the admin sergeant an admin sergeant that functions in the patrol setting. So we wouldn't be losing anybody from the field. They would still be doing that, but they'd have additional task assignments that they could focus on top of being available for the field if need be. We would have an investigation sergeant that is solely dedicated to investigative sergeant stuff, that runs caseloads, that writes search warrants, be on call. Because right now we have 2 in-house, they flip-flop back and forth on call, and they've been asking for 3 years that they need another in-house detective because their caseload is huge. So that would function and work in our favor. So not only help them out on the back end with the day-to-day, but also help more supervision so that we can get somebody trained for that position.
Question.
Yeah.
So each shift would have a shift sergeant?
Yes.
That's your goal?
Yes. Every shift right now currently has a shift sergeant.
This would be go to investigation,
Yes.
which supervises for
Yes.
investigators.
But
This one also does investigation.
But they would also, yeah, the problem with what we have now is the administrative sergeant, which is Sergeant Wynn. Like I said, she does an amazing job. But we threw her into the role of, hey, you're supervising the investigators. And literally she walks in and goes, you guys good today?
Yeah.
Cool. And then we can't send her to training because she can't miss any days to go to training to learn to be a detective. She doesn't have that experience. And I have people that are in-house right now that fit that role perfectly. So we have enough.
Would there be detectives as well?
Yes. They would run it. They would run the investigations unit, and they would function as a detective. So they would add. You'd kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You'd have oversight, and you'd have somebody that actually can do the job and work a caseload with the detectives. Yes.
So basically you have 2 detectives, and you can go to 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
In-house. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
And they would also function doing internal affairs investigations. We do incident reviews for all high liability items, use of force, pursuits, and officer-involved crashes.
Backgrounds were
Yeah.
low.
We don't
Say that.
I said it, sorry. So that would help out a lot, and like I said, we've kind of restructured it to make it work to where we're not all burned out, and I'm not getting people going other places for less work with. So the new positions, like I said, I'm always going to come to you and put things that are on my mind to you, whether we're going to get them or not. And I understand when budgets are tight that we're not going to get everything we ask for, but I want on your purview. Huge thing that we usually get, like we spoke about last year with the 2 traffic officer positions, somebody that's dedicated traffic enforcement, targeted enforcement. That's a huge, one of our biggest complaints from all our residents in town is traffic enforcement, traffic enforcement, traffic enforcement. So I did include them, and it's not suggested to move forward, which I understand, but I did want that in the conversation, even though we're doing a really good job. And just some numbers for y'all. Total traffic stops for the fiscal year so far since July 1 of 2025 till the end of March. We've done 3,840 traffic stops.
I was one of them.
There's several people in this room. And then we get into the cycle. So with that, they're doing a really good job, even though we don't have a dedicated traffic unit. And just for everybody's knowledge, we do traffic enforcement on downtime. It's proactive activity in between calls for service. Our calls for service are up right now. They seem to be getting a little restless in town, so our calls that are usually pretty small are turning into larger, more critical incidents. Just how things go, but that's pretty good number. 3,840 traffic stops. DUIs so far, we're up to 70
What do we
DUIs.
normally have?
I think last year, all year, we had 40 something.
Oh, wow.
So, huge, and like I said, we have good officers that are out there proactively seeking that out, and they're going to drug recognition school and phlebotomists, so they're handling a lot of good stuff. Citations issued 1,656, warnings issued 1,375, and I like the 50-50, we're educating the public with warnings, and if they don't learn, they get a court coupon. So they're doing really well on that, even though we don't have a traffic unit, but in the future, like I said, that would be a need. I can start it with 2 officers, but again, it's not being pushed forward this year. The accreditation manager, that's something we've identified over the last year during our accreditation process. A lot of agencies have a full-time accreditation person. It is a full-time job. It's huge with oversight with policies and things of that nature. Right now I have a lieutenant doing that. Does an amazing job, but he's in the drop and he's moving out of here in about 4 years, 2 months, 17 days. I'm counting down. So he'll get us through another reaccreditation, but we need to start focusing on maybe transitioning, have a succession plan for that. And I think that would probably be housed in a better location in a civilian world rather than a sworn person that's also running a bunch of other things and doesn't really have time for the accreditation, but we're making it work. It's just something that we need to have a conversation in the future because it's going to be a necessity. Is there another slide?
I don't see emergency services manager.
YCSO dispatch contract. Sorry.
Sorry, I just want to let them know, page 37 for the first part here.
Do this on purpose.
Shuffle it up.
I don't know about that 1%. There, over there now.
So the YCSO dispatch contract, obviously we have an IGA with them and an increase, an annual increase that we can't get around, so obviously that's pushed forward. We have no other choice. If you guys wanted to have our own dispatch center, I'd run the numbers.
Don't you
It's not
like,
gonna happen anytime in the near
don't
future.
you like the way it is?
Yeah, we love YCSO, it's good. It's really, there's a lot to be said for having your own too, but there's no
Not to the
way.
side. Yeah.
No way we could afford that, yeah. We'd get all the roads paved in town before we did it. So that's going through. I asked for a little bit of money for our cadet program. Obviously, it's super important for public outreach. We have, I think, we're up to 11 or 12 kiddos that are doing a really, really good job. They compete every year. They're out at all the events, donating their time. I had a couple, I had one out there working during our last 9/11 Memorial Work Day this last weekend. May or may not have been my own child, but he was put to work.
Mason.
Yeah, he's a Mason, he was laying the catering. I asked for the $7,000, not because we're gonna spend it, but just as a buffer, because we're seeing a lot of the donations as we've gotten in the past have kind of dried up a little bit. People are spending more money on things and can't really afford to give that extra dollar to us. So I needed that as kind of a buffer to where they can still earn their way, and it's an as-needed type thing, so if we don't need it, we're not gonna touch it. Obviously, we're to push through 3,500, so half of the 7, which is great. It's just something so we can make sure they're getting to their competition. They only go to one thing every year. So I think that's a good thing to have, especially, it's a vital role for us in, mentoring that next generation of people, yeah. Yeah.
Is there any grant money out there, something like that?
I'm always looking.
I've looked, it's hard, it has to be tied to something else, and,
Yeah.
yeah, so.
And so typically it's other types of donations just to support that program rather than grants.
And
They've been good at getting
And
those.
I can tell you, they've hit their mark every single year. So I just don't want to tell them no with all their hard work at the end of the year. If we need a little bit of that money, then we can use it. If we don't need it, then we won't use it. Records request.
Can I
Go ahead, sorry.
interrupt a little
Yeah.
bit? So just on that with the cadet program, so that budget line is actually also with the community outreach line. So that's also our national night out, and we do budget in the general fund 10,000 a year for that as well. Last year, they weren't needing to use any of those funds because they were really proactive on getting those donations, and people were very generous. So together, but for National Night Out and this program, would be a recommended total of $13,500. So.
Hot dogs are the big expense, right?
That's right.
We're gonna have to start
So
charging.
with that, that's why the town manager might reduce that amount a little bit, because we think there's maybe flexibility between the 2 events to cover both of them.
And not
With what we
losing
have
the-
budgeted in the general fund. That's just.
So the records request public portal. So again, going through the ALEAP accreditation and having documentation and redundancy and protections and records keeping and all that kind of stuff is huge. I can tell you our interagency police records request so far this fiscal year was 488. Police public records request was 320 for a total of 808 records requests so far this year. So with trying to maintain continual records management of that and having a platform that, basically the platform we found and did a lot of research on does all that. It keeps track, it sends reminder emails to the people that are doing it. It's online, there's a portal where they can pay, and it tracks everything to where our records folks, when I ask them for that number, they don't have to go through and count 808 records and try to figure out times and stuff. It's all redundant stuff in there that we can pull at the end for accreditation stuff as well. So huge thing, and it's a great program, and it's one of the cheaper ones that we found that hits every mark that we need. The Power DMS, IA, Action, Vitals, that again goes with the ALEAP accreditation. As we started looking at internal investigations and we talked about merit increases and things like that, and this program and this function is already part of the Power DMS that we have. They just flip the switch and then they charge us an extra couple bucks to get it done. But it's kind of like Axon with body cams and tape. This will allow us to track things better, to keep in contact or keep in compliance with ARS, Arizona Revised Statute stuff. Has everything in there, and it will save the town a lot of back-end explanations if something's done wrong. It keeps us honest with all of our internal affairs investigations, and again, it goes to that ALEAP accreditation standard that we need to uphold and continue. One-time operating, the records request for the portal thing, that's the one-time and then the continuing, right?
Yeah,
Continuing
it's
is
just
12,000?
together.
So those are together. Rifle replacement. So we're asking for a third of our rifles to be overturned this year. I can tell you my personal one that I got when I first got hired here is still the same one that I have. My firearms instructors, I'm not a firearm guru. I'm sure I can probably talk to you about that stuff and you'd understand, but a lot of the headspace stuff with our rifles that we have are getting kind of wonky, and we're starting to replace a lot of parts and pieces. So instead of asking for a full fail swoop of every single rifle, we're trying to overturn a third per the next 3 years.
Like 11 rifles? Yeah. That's a good deal. Are you suppressing your SBRs?
So that was in the conversation, and if we have extra money outside of that, we'll look into that. But yes, that was something.
The only thing I would say is you almost have to.
Yes, absolutely.
Because then you're going to have hearing claims if
Yes.
you actually go to deploy those inside of a building.
Absolutely. So all those things, and this is kind of what we came up with as far as what we need now, and we'll get some overturn money from buyback and stuff like that, so we'll be able to
Maybe buy
do
suppressors with that.
Yes.
Cool.
So, we've looked into that, and again, I didn't want to hit you with the, hey, we need $140,000 for 38 rifle. So 13 I thought was good. Over the next 3 years, we can overturn our rifle stock. And then minor capital replacement of 2 vehicles, 2 patrol units. I believe, if my mind serves me correctly, 2 of our COP vehicles that have like 109 million miles on them, that aren't being utilized or on the way out, and then we'll give them one of our older patrol vehicles, restock it, and then give our patrol guys a couple new units to run out there.
That's with a kit, right?
Yeah.
It's fully kitted?
Fully kitted out, everything we need as far as parts, pieces, and all that stuff. And I can tell you, Matt does a really good job keeping track at Fleet. Those guys over there are amazing. So Matt says, hey, this is what we need. I trust them.
And again, that's part of,
2 and 14, yep, COP units.
and that we're trying to spread those out and do those on, because before, it used to come before like 10 all at once. And so we've been getting where we have a program now that we can sustain it more fiscally.
And it was awesome this year. He's like, hey, this unit's not being used that much. And I'm like, what? So now my guys are using it. So it gives like the average mileage and who's low, who's high, where can we allocate more vehicles to. So you got a question?
Yeah, off subject, but on the COP, do they solicit donations for the vacation check?
No, I don't think so.
I know the county does that, and they get a good chunk of change.
We got people asking for a break, so keep those thoughts in mind, and we'll take about 10.
Thank you.
Moving on to public works, so the first one will be page 17.
Sure. Page 17.
So for personnel, we have a request of a reclassification of a custodian to a senior custodian that's not being recommended. Also, 2 new positions, a fleet mechanic and a part maintenance worker, also not recommended. Any questions there?
Bunch of red X's.
Get that pen out.
You're done?
Thank you.
Sure.
Next,
One-time operating expense, transportation alternatives design. This is
page 45.
Sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
This is related to pedestrian improvements along Northward 1 East and East Perkinsville Road in the vicinity of the community center and territorial schools. The town match is $17,670 with the grant amount being $292. That is recommended.
Just curious, what are they gonna, what improvement do they want to do there?
Concrete multi-use path.
Along the
Along
east-west?
Along
Perkinsville?
east side of 1 East,
One
south
east.
side of Perkinsville. Minor capital,
It's just one side, that's all. South side, did you say?
So you're where the baseball fields are.
correct.
So that would have to get done before.
We
Design
would
work like that.
coordinate.
Well, if you remember, this might have been part of our talk when we did the Perkins 44, we thought about that whole process
Yes,
too.
it was.
Minor capital, epoxy aquatics locker room floor for $15K recommended, and utility cart for $20, and a mower for $125 not recommended. Major capital improvements, town hall roof, $75,000 recommended, and parks maintenance building design for $300K, and field 4 and playground lighting for $1.5 million not recommended.
That get us a steel roof?
No.
Oh, for this building?
Yeah.
Is there a roof back?
Yes.
Only when it rains.
All 3 days?
It's really hard.
Then you never do have to do it again.
The only thing I've got on this,
Hail damage?
and I've already talked to Cindy about it, so she knows, is that we gotta start putting work together. We just paid to epoxy the whole pool deck, and now we're gonna have to go back and pay another contract to have somebody do a bathroom floor. That all should have been done together.
Well, I think they're 2 different products, aren't they?
They are
Yeah.
2 different
They are, but I'm
products.
sure the same company probably could have done both.
Shasta's doing the pool, and I think we had used just a general
Yeah.
for the bathrooms. And like Councilman Holt and I spoke about
Yeah.
earlier today, was that all the deferred maintenance on that pool building for the
Yes.
past 20 years, we identify something that needs to be done, and lo and behold, the next day you turn around and you're like, oops,
And
should
the
have
last,
done that one too.
the last 4, it's really hit us. I mean, we had the
100%.
pumps, and then we had the pool itself, and the decking, and now this. Although this one's a drop in the bucket compared to the others.
And your argument's not falling on deaf ears. I think that's one of the things we've seen, and we're moving to, we hadn't really had really good planned replacement, asset management programs. We didn't necessarily have that with our fleet. We have that now. So it's one of the things we're talking about with facilities. You know, we really need to do the same kind of exercise there where we evaluate, inventory, and put a plan so we're not as reactive, we're more proactive in those situations. So absolutely hear what you're saying.
Just, I know this, Cindy, I'm not pushing for this, so just something that the council will have to consider at some point. Fiscally, if we keep having to tighten belts, privatize that pool, lease it out, and then let somebody do it. I mean, because what is our operating cost for that pool every year? Close to $250,000? I mean, salaries, benefits, electricity.
Over a quarter.
And you're absolutely right, it is one of those areas where we don't get the money back, but we have seen when we
Well, yeah,
have
but-
come to that the community has said they don't care how much it costs us, they want that.
Well,
So-
they want the pool, and I understand that, and I value that pool.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, there's gonna be a point whether you can privatize it, YMCA, or somebody, so that it takes the whole long-term, because that's $1 million in 4 years, operating, if nothing else increases. You remove that, and lease it out, let somebody privatize it.
Not here, I know that I've been involved in that conversation elsewhere, in a couple of the cases where it happened, what you tend to find is then they truly do deferred maintenance, and then it gets to the point where then they walk away and the town takes it back over, and all you have is costs. So it has to be very carefully structured if you're looking at that, because they're going to look at just, how much can I make and can I make my revenue? They don't care about the long-term investment. Yeah.
And they might be able
Especially
to-
if something that really is it would be very difficult to turn that into a revenue generating.
Unless they put a roof over it.
The only way you do it is to close it.
Yep,
Yeah,
yes.
God
But
knows
good
how much that
conversations.
costs.
All right, moving on to streets, and Steve's going through these pretty fast, so I won't give page numbers, but we can go to specific detail if you guys want to see that.
So minor capital, welding and service conversion, 20,000. So we have an old pickup that has a welder in it. We're gonna remove that welder, put it in another pickup and get rid of that older pickup.
Wasn't there a welder in the new truck you bought last year, the service vehicle?
That was for fleet service. This is for
Okay,
streets,
that's where I missed
yeah.
that.
Yes,
Okay.
good point.
And a commercial mower for 190K, not recommended. Major capital projects, street improvements for $2 million is recommended. And we have an item coming before you tomorrow for this fiscal year's award. And streets, building, parking lot, and outdoor improvements for $150,000, not recommended.
That would be down $1 million from last year, street improvements.
Correct.
this year we're doing 3, 5,
3.
3.
Thought we had 500,000 in there.
It was 2.5 and you
Oh,
guys
okay.
added
Did we take Perkinsville off for this year?
Correct.
Because we're looking at potential
Yeah.
longer-term solutions.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
For water, operating a regional water facilitation, partially recommended,
Do you want Terry and I to talk about that?
please.
So this is that regional water request that actually came in from Mr. Holmes. And with that, he was thinking around 33,000, but that's for the outreach and additional materials and outreach to councils and things like that. So Terry and I felt at this time that if all the other agencies are partnering with it, that 11,000 would be adequate at this time. We can pull more to
Yeah,
it.
the original, the
So
grant
now
that we.
county
it
doing
would-
their own
Yeah,
thing?
originally there was a grant that was supposed to, that kind of, we don't know what happened at the county, was 25 for the entire thing. So now that they use that for something else, if we all put in, all the entities put in, we figured 11,000 is plenty, to move that forward if we need to get a facilitator and do some other things to keep regional
This is the
water.
steering
But
committee.
is the whole regional water group even gonna happen, or is that money
It's
well
still-
spent if it falls apart? I
Well,
know
the
the grant-
conversations are moving forward, so the mayors have all agreed that they want to see it moving forward. So right now, operational staff, the water resources staff are having meetings, they're going to be having their third meeting and making recommendations, and one of them is to fund a facilitator to come in and formalize next steps. So it is moving forward.
And county's on board.
This would be like the steering committee, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Realize that the county is not a water provider, they're up to their you-know-what in alligators, because they don't know what they're doing. So we're trying to bring in the people that know what they're doing and come up with something that works.
Correct, but I just
But they're
hope it
water
stays
users.
together.
Yes.
We're
So
trying
far.
to keep it together,
So
but,
far.
It's like herding cats.
yeah, at any given moment, somebody's gonna drop trowel and run.
Then that's money down the toilet, that's
Yes.
all I'm saying.
Exactly.
So that's why we feel more comfortable with 11,000 investment, but.
So the next one similarly was a request from Mr. Holmes for a utility risk vulnerability assessment. That at this time, we're not recommending because I think there needs to be some other steps in place first as far as.
And we're going through the idea of
Yeah.
integrated water master plan, which is going to have some pieces of that and identify where they may be. So this is kind of putting the cart before the horse. Let's get through the IWMP, see what kind of recommendations they have about our system, and then we can decide where we need to spend that money.
But that is something that you'll probably see in future years come up after that completion.
Do we have a scheduled finalization date on the master plan?
We have put it on hold now until our new public works director comes in. So we've asked the consultant to wait, and they said that's fine. We actually have put a 1099 agreement with our incoming public works director so that we can send that to him, and he's going to review the integrated water master plan. And so on his leisure, in his next couple months, so when he comes in, he's ready to hit the ground running.
When's he coming out?
May?
May?
We're doing him in May, is that what?
June 1st.
June 1st.
June 1st.
June 1st.
Yeah, he better get his leisure now, because after June 1st, he's not getting.
Exactly.
And year 3 of our surge protection program for 15K is
And that is the Bright Star well location, which is why it's under the water side. But we've been working the last 2 years. There's been investment from the general fund for different locations across the town.
So,
I thought we funded that this last year.
We did.
We did continue
Yeah,
on
so-
grant.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
okay, so vacuum truck, we had it in the budget this year for 500,000. It's not recommended because we did find a product that we liked under 400,000. It is a demo model that's, if we don't buy it here shortly, it'll go to Oregon is my understanding. And that will be an item on tomorrow's agenda.
So if, we'll take that for you, if you approve that, then we won't need this. If you don't approve that tomorrow, then we would look to put this back in the budget for next year.
Because it was already budgeted.
I was gonna say, I thought we.
If we found outside funding.
Yeah, but this would save us $100,000.
Yeah, so we had put it in, we've carried it the last few years, remember it was originally 800 and then it was 700 and
Okay.
we kept trying to get it more reasonable and that we needed to find some outside source of funding. So this time we found something that is a demo.
Looking forward
It's
to
a little
this.
smaller, but it still meets our needs. And, you know, we can get it for a really good price.
Yeah, and it was something, I mean, the team in Public Works should be commended because they went through every option, whether that was buying another one at auction or what the options were there, and there was a lot of analysis on that and really trying to dial in what their needs were. Additionally, we talked through the fact that other areas are going to be using that, so instead of putting the full burden on the wastewater side, it can legitimately be split amongst other areas, because we'll be able to use it townwide for a variety of things.
And I would like to, on what she said, there really was an impressive, all minds come together, fleet, utilities, finance. We looked at, there was something out there at auction, and so we thought, oh, the price is really good, but then Matt and utilities went out there and they said, well, now this is how much it's gonna cost us, so that actually costed us more, and then this came up as an option, and they looked at it, they could bring it back. And then the other thing that spoke to the need, you know, this is kind of a kick the can down the road. We should, as a utility, be having a sewer cleanout program. And we don't have that, and when that doesn't happen, you have things that happen, like we had a few weeks back, we had a sanitary sewer overflow, and they found out it was because of a clogged sewer. We had to use our emergency assistance program, called Prescott. Prescott came over and brought their vac truck and their people, and they cleaned it out. But that just put to the point that, you know, we have to stop kicking this can, and we need to have this piece of equipment.
Do we have people to operate it?
We have 3 utility staff that are trained to operate already.
Perfect, good job.
So it really is.
It doesn't have to be ordered, it can be delivered right away.
Yes, Nancy.
Yes. So it is, you know, great problem solving by staff and getting us what we need operationally, being incredibly fiscally responsible. So I can't say enough how much they need to be applauded for that effort.
And they already went out and tested it and made sure it worked, you know, and feel very confident, Jesse's team, that it will serve the needs.
Moving on to town clerk.
So this is a supplemental request for an additional $35,000 for this upcoming election season for referendum.
Denied.
There's
If you deny it, that's fine, it's gonna come out of contingencies anyways, because we have to do it, so.
Normally I don't ask for an additional amount, even though I know there's always a potential for a general election or a possible runoff. However, this year, when there was talks of referendum and recall, the thought was we better ask for this because we may need not only a general, we could also need a special if there was continued for recall as well, so.
I think we'd save money if we just found a sniper.
This is recorded, it's right over there. Short-tempered attitude.
Erin, is there a chance that this will be on November, or are we gonna have to go with a special election on it?
For the referendum,
November.
November.
Good.
So moving on to town manager's area, there's just one request.
Excuse me, I asked Maggie if she would speak to this,
Sure.
since this is in her area.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. So this is a analytics platform. It's a database of how you can attract retail. And there's a few different ones that you can select from, but it's basically database decision making. So when we have site selectors that I'm speaking to, they oftentimes use that kind of technology now, and they use that based on 1, 3, 5 mile radius information, which we are not here. We are drive time, so we have to paint the story a little bit differently and supply them with data, and it does everything from traffic counts to you can geofence like a Safeway and see how many cars are coming in and out. You can track spending behaviors as to who's staying in town, where they're shopping, where they're eating, where they're leaving to, so you can track leakage, and that all tells a story for site selectors when we're trying to get people to come in, especially retail. But it wouldn't only be for me. Community services would like to have it so that they can track their events and how many people are coming.
Public Works use that too?
Pretty much anybody can use it for different things, yes.
And one of the things that,
Traffic counts and whatnot.
yeah,
Traffic studies.
it has a lot of good data that can use for several different things, whether it's that or whether it's grant making. But one of the things we're finding as we talk about realigning and Maggie and her efforts, and one of the things that she was originally brought into, but then, the economy dumped and there really wasn't a lot of activity in the development, but is going out and talking to recruit and actively bring these businesses in, and they look for data. They, what can you give me, what can you tell me? And this will give her some of the tools to make those arguments why this is the place to come.
Yes, because I can speak all day long and know what's going on, but I have to be able to prove that with data or data that I don't even really talk to anymore because they all use it. They all have their tablet as they're talking to you when you're talking about your community. And then also for grant writing, Jessie will be able to use it to back up, whatever, if she's writing a grant for transportation, how many travelers are on that road and et cetera. So
One
it's-
time cost?
This is ongoing, because you subscribe to the service.
It's an annual subscription.
Yep.
Yes.
Exactly.
Seems like a lot, but if we don't do this, if we don't do whatever we can to draw in
Yes.
more businesses.
It's a minimal
Well, it's
investment, I
something we
think.
can revisit too to see if it's effective.
Yes.
We can cancel it if it's not
Yes.
producing.
And there are tools that are much more expensive that are typically used. We found a better cost point to start out and see what we get. And then we can see, do we need to dial up with one of the more, or is this meet our needs, or it's not meeting our needs? So that
Can you
absolutely.
keep that on your radar, Katie, that we're spending this, and what's, give us kind of a yearly update on what it's done
And I can
for?
let you know if it's working too.
So, yeah, so put that in your updates and tell us what's happening once we get there.
Any questions?
As long as it brings in revenue.
So that was the end of the request. So over the next few slides, it'll just be a summary for each types of requests. So for example, all the personnel requests are here, both the recommended and the not recommended. So this is your opportunity to talk about or have further discussion on any of these items. or, let us know what you're thinking.
Yes, is there anything red you want to turn green? Is there anything green you want to turn red? Is there anything you want more information on to make that decision, so that we can come back to you and have those discussions at the next one?
I think we already talked about IT's.
I think we already
Possibly
checked
change
the
the
tree.
tree.
Yeah.
He's gonna, Spencer, you're gonna check in with maybe that in a different way, but.
Chief, not for this year, but maybe in the future, is there a possibility your accreditation manager could also be your emergency services person?
I looked at that and I'm weighing it depends on how,
Good day.
yeah, it depends on how good they are. It's a lot. Accreditation is
Right.
huge. I was gonna say it depends on how good I am over the next couple of years to get emergency management to a point where it's kind of self-sustaining-ish, but we're not there yet. So I think it would be a little much for right now.
Okay, thanks.
So we heard mixed things on the positions to freeze. Is there any other discussion wanted on that or any other input?
My 2 cents is I oppose it, but that's just one person, so.
And that is specifically the police officer.
I
Or is
really would
it-
like to see us keep all 3 of them.
Oh, all
to
three.
Tell the truth,
Oh,
just
that's right, you
because
did.
things happen, and when they happen, then all of a sudden we're gonna need stuff. Maybe with the new road maintenance program we've come up with, we won't be out there filling as many potholes, but I see those guys out there busting their butt every day, and it's a losing battle for them. So, but, I would love to see a different way to come up to fund that rather than to start freezing positions, because we know what's happening right now. They're not coming back if we freeze them, unless something major turns around in the economy.
Larry, I do believe that he said, though, that street maintenance worker has not been filled for, right?
Right?
Yeah.
Ever. So they're not actually looking at a curtailment of,
And I think,
No, they're not
I
curtailing
think
anything,
with,
it's just, if had to be a reason why it was approved originally.
I think with doing double the roads we're gonna do, hopefully we'll make some headway on some.
That's what I'm hoping too. And like I said, you guys may not need somebody today, but tomorrow you might. So I just hate, like I said, you freeze it this year, next year we're in the same, if not worse condition, it gets frozen again, eventually we lose that staff.
That's why the FTEs are still.
And how many times have we heard the chief
Yes.
come in here and, say, I need people?
that's part of Chief 101 school.
I don't know about that.
And that's why they're keeping the FTEs on the books, so they are able to.
We can come back to you and say in the middle of the year, we would like to take off the freeze and fund it from contingency.
As long as we can do that, that's fine. I
But
just don't want to see
costs-
him on this lockdown freeze where he can't get anybody. Of course, he's got to find some candidates first.
If expenses keep exceeding revenue
That's fine.
on a constant basis, then you have no choice.
But the last thing I want to cut is anything that has to do with public safety.
We really don't have any
Roads,
capital
roads,
improvement
whatever.
funding extra. We can't, there's nowhere, like, if we want to expand fire suppression to 89 in the north or even in the south to draw in development, we don't even have the funding to pay for the loan for that right now. We're tied up unless we make drastic cuts somewhere else.
So, yeah, it would be the money that we're allocating right now to the street improvements, because we do transfer from the general capital improvement fund to the streets capital improvement fund. And that money would essentially be what you would use for that, unless construction took off or some of the other
Right, so
retail areas.
and that's the big picture issue, because how are we gonna grow development if we don't make, like, fire suppression seems like such a little thing, but that drives out businesses from starting. We can't get water to them for suppression. So we gotta find a way to, but we don't even have the funding to pay for it unless we steal it from streets. And if we have bad streets, we already have bad streets when we're talking about. But we're not gonna be,
So we'll say that, that revenue discussion portion of this is really expenditure side, but the revenue one, after the last one we had on economic development, the team has met, and is putting some plans to come back together and have some of those topics for you, so it'll be a good discussion we're anxious to have.
well,
Are there any other comments or thoughts on the personnel requests, either moving stuff up or down? So operating, as Councilmember Switzer mentioned, the IT, Trend Micro intrusion, potentially should be moved above the line. Seem to be kind of,
And maybe what we could do
consensus
is
there.
instead of calling it trend micro intrusion, but it is intrusion detection
And
program.
then, yeah,
So you
that's,
can look
that's the
into it.
thing.
That
I mean,
lets it,
Or maybe
that
put
keeps
just
it
a
up. until-
placeholder for it, just
Yeah.
because Spencer might come up with a different
'Cause, yeah.
solution.
Trend is just one of the companies
Yeah.
that I got quotes from, but it's,
Yeah.
you know,
It's a micro
It's a-
detection.
yeah, it's a broader arena of security, so.
Yeah.
Placeholder on it?
Either approve it or placeholder.
Okay, so we will look at that, and
Okay.
then, as far as Y Plan and YRT, we'll see about both of those entities coming to present at the next, discussion, so you all can hear from them. And then anything else on here that you would like moved or changed?
So we're agreeing to the yellow?
The yellow was a partially approved, so up, where it's up above the line, it's included in the recommended options.
Chief,
So
is
it
it-
was just split.
That 3,500 is yearly? For
Yes.
cadet program?
Mhm.
Yeah, I asked for 7, half is pushed forward, the other half is not pushed forward.
They need to start doing some car washes.
But yeah, that's the annual cost to fund their
I
program,
have lots of other
should they not get donations.
And the goal, as Chief mentioned, is for them to get the donations on their own. It was kind of a last resort.
But if they don't get donations, we don't want to see it go away, so
Yeah,
that's
it's
why.
getting hard to get donations
Get
from them.
donations for anything.
Yes.
Any other comments on this page? All right, one-time operating. These are those one-time operating expenses. Any comments, any additional thoughts?
It sounds like the comp and class study is kind of being done in office right now, Laura, to some extent.
We do it annually and formally.
That'll probably come back next year.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, I'll move on to the next. Minor capital, any changes or recommendations on this?
Vector truck should not go to yellow or something other than red.
We'll vote yellow pending tomorrow.
Tomorrow evening makes a decision on the tractor truck.
Yep.
Forever.
That was Amy's too.
I think all of us would like to see some conclusion there.
On that one,
I have the perfect place to test it.
There you go. I found one.
I can take that and go one of different directions.
Yeah.
All right.
Easy now.
So then, last one, major capital. Any changes on this?
Just want to find out, so that the top line, Cindy, is dedicated to 1B of the pickleball vision, the one that the Pratt put out?
In the multi-phase.
So that's a good point. The first phase may not be completed by the end of the year. We talked about that in the packet, but if it's not fully completed, then part of those funds will roll over in addition to this amount. But again, if they're considered in the bottom line of the budget and the cash balances as being fully expended this year. So if they're not, it doesn't mean that that'll drop even more, it just means it's gonna spent next year, not this year.
What's the square footage of this building?
5,000.
Have you already got quotes for the roof, or? Oh, okay. I didn't think it was
So what you're saying is you would like us to see what a metal roof would cost and then,
Well,
Yeah.
okay.
Materials coming through the street.
I figured my house.
So maybe.
I don't know, I haven't done a roof.
Worth it in the long run.
That would definitely be.
On the field floor playground lighting, I don't know who Jason's worked with or anything else, but there's a lot of, like, you can go down and talk to the Diamondbacks, Rawlings, the sport companies, and really try and, there's gotta be some grant money out there for that kind of a project.
There is.
Looking at that, I sent you a advertising.
Yeah.
It's a baseball
It's not
field.
really,
Even EPS.
we have,
West
we have some
Field?
constraints
It would be nice
because
to get one.
we don't have the lighting already in place to where you get the energy savings that they build a lot of their model on. And then, we don't have the economies of scale to where it makes it worth it for a lot of them. So you end up basically leasing it long-term, so you end up paying more for it.
And what drives the cost up so much on these is there's not any conduit or infrastructure already there. All three of the other fields were, the conduit and the infrastructure was put in when the fields were built. That's why we were able to light field 3, 6 years ago for about $300,000, almost $400,000. And this one's just almost triple the price, simply because of having to put everything else in.
And I think your point is absolutely, can we look at it, and there probably is sources out there, I don't think really had capacity to devote to that now that we have someone that we can stick on those kinds of projects, we certainly will.
And you would think that the people that use it should be out there looking to help out with that too, like Little League and stuff like that.
They're limited on funds.
They look for grants.
Get a little bit here and there.
Nice partnership of some sort.
We could start charging 50 cents a
And
hot
starting to get a
dog.
lot of.
You do 1,000 hot dogs, you'll be making big bucks.
We're just looking at trying to buy more ammo.
So with that, next steps, based on what we heard from you tonight, bring back a few items with a little more information on the 27th. And then we potentially will discuss budget further, at least give you an overall update on May 12th at the regular meeting. And then tentative budget adoption would be the 26th of May. That way, by that point, you all are comfortable with what's in there, or you've had a chance to state your pros and cons on it together. And then public notices get posted, and remember the tentatives when we set the top limit. It can always be reduced after that, it just can't be raised. And then we'll have our public hearings and final budget adoption at the end of June. Just the next pieces of this, and appreciate all of your time. And if you come up with any questions after, I know some of you had additional questions following the meeting last year. So please feel free to reach out to Carrie and I, and we'll get you more additional information.
So in a nutshell, we have 2 more meetings to, if there's any modifications.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Great presentation.
Get 2 more bites.
Well, I just want to thank staff and all the directors for sharpening your pencils and doing what you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you for saying that, because there really was a lot of work and sweat and tears that everybody went through to get to this stage.
Any other final things?
We're out.